Hi everyone, it's Tricia Farin from William Ravis, a real estate agent in Newtown, Connecticut, and you're watching Keeping the Real in Real Estate. And today I want to talk to you about a very serious issue that's been going on in the news. I'm sure you may have heard that there's a lawsuit being brought against the National Association of Realtors. That association is a 100-year-old association that real estate agents are members of. And for us, the most important component is that it has a code of ethics that we agree to abide by. So if in the middle of a transaction there's an agent that's not necessarily doing business in the proper manner, we have a governing body that we can talk to say this person's not abiding by the code of ethics. And they can either be disciplined, they can lose their license, they could be fined. There definitely is a course of action. And it's to make sure that we are properly representing our clients and doing right by them as we conduct transactions to buy and sell real estate. Now, recently, I'm sure you have heard in the news that there is a lawsuit that has been brought against NAR. And basically, it's saying that because of a mandate that NAR has that sellers must pay the agent that sells the house, not necessarily the listing agent, but that he who or she that is representing the buyer must also be paid a commission by the seller. The problem with this is it's a lack of proper communication. And if you're listening to the news, you're hearing things like devastating lawsuit, or now this is going to change the industry forever. And with all things coming with the news, I get frustrated because it's very sensationalized. That's not actually what's happening. Basically, the seller is not actually paying the buyer's agent. The seller is paying a commission to the listing agent. And that commission is actually not being paid to the agent themselves. It's being paid to the brokerage in which they represent. And that brokerage allows for the compensation to anybody who is representing the buyer, another real estate agent, to be compensated as part of that commission. So when you hear that a commission is, let's say, for a $500,000 house, 5%, so you have a $25,000 commission, that's not all going to the agent. And that's a huge misconception. People think that, oh my gosh, the agent's commissions, they're making bank. That's not actually how it happens. That commission is split. So let's just assume, for argument's sake, everything is done in equal components. So that 25, the listing brokerage has their half, so $12,500. The buyer's brokerage has the same amount. Then those dollars are further divided between the brokerage and the actual agent doing the job based on a agreed upon commission scale that is between the agent and the brokerage. These commissions that are listed as part of the selling component are negotiable. And I think that's the portion that is coming out with misconceived notions as from this lawsuit. The lawsuit is stating that sellers are being told they have to do this in order to be part of the MLS, and that there is no opportunity for negotiation, so it's basically a violation of antitrust and kind of forming a monopoly. That's actually not the case. Right now, to list a house on the MLS, you do need to put what the buyer agency percentage is. You do not need to put what the listing percentage is. So it's entirely possible that an agent can list a house that they're contracted to get 5% and give 2% to the buyer's agent and take 3% for themselves. It could be within any distribution. I think what the problem is this. During COVID, there was this influx of ease of selling a house. So there were plenty of sellers that felt, I don't need a real estate agent. I could just say on Facebook that I'm selling my house. 426,000 people will come in and give me half of those in offers, and I'll sell my house in 6.6 seconds. And perhaps that happened. But a few things happened with it. I would almost guarantee that they didn't get what their house was worth, because Unless you were already in the industry, you don't have the resources or knowledge to know exactly how to price a house. Sellers think they do, but I can promise you I've come across many a seller that's had the information incorrect because they're not using the right resources to get that value. A house is not worth what you think it's worth because your kids grew up there and you have great memories. It's also not worth what you think it's worth because you put a gold wall in a room when that's never going to be supported by the neighborhood. There's also a whole nother component. There's protection that agents have with their clients. As a listing agent, my allegiance is to my seller. So any piece of information I come across, any negotiation, just the entire dialogue throughout the entire transaction is in protection of my seller. If I was the buyer's agent, my allegiance is to my buyer. So I protect them to make sure that they are getting the information that they need to make a sound decision so that when they sign on the dotted line on that closing day, they know exactly what they're getting into. It's the matter of the disclosure of all this information. And I don't think agents do a really good job of explaining to their sellers. So your commission is negotiable. That's one. And two, it's split 4 ways. And some people might come across and be like, well, that's a lot of money for a real estate agent to just list my house. So if you think that we're just listing your house on the MLS and walking away, you're misinformed. I don't know why that misconceived notion is the case, but it's not. In our scenario of this $500,000 house that's getting a 5% commission, if, let's say, for argument's sake, the listing agent and the buyer's agent are separate, and the listing agent has a split of, let's say, 60% to the brokerage, they're getting $7,500. Now that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. Is it? So think about what you do for your work in all different industries. So let's say, for argument's sake, your hourly rate is $125. Now that might sound a lot to some people and maybe not so much to others, depending on what you do for a living. If you're a high-powered attorney, that's going to seem like pocket change. Certainly if you're working in a minimum wage position, that's going to seem like a lot. But call a plumber, call an electrician, and see how much it costs for them just to walk in your door. So in that $125 scenario, if they're making $7,500 in commission, that's 60 hours worth of work. Do you think that your agents, whether it's buyer or seller, are putting in 60 hours? I guarantee you that's not even a drop in the bucket. And depending on what kind of house you have, the market that it's in, the neighborhood that it's in, how you price it, all sorts of different things, the hustling that agent has to do is a lot. A lot. So now, take for instance, a situation where the sellers don't want to pay for a buyer's agent to do their job, and the buyer now needs to cough up that money up front as part of their commission. They're already paying a deposit and they have all the closing costs. Where is that extra $7,500 going to come from? It's not going to come from the agent because the agent needs to get paid. So as a seller, you're now going to be in a position where either the buyer's going to come back and say, I need you to pay for this at closing, just like whatever other seller credit is coming in, or I can't buy this house because I was never planning on having to cough up this additional extra money. Sellers also think, well, I'm paying for the buyer's agent and they are representing the buyer. Why should I pay for somebody who doesn't have my best interest at heart? But that is not what's happening. You are paying your agent to represent you. You are pricing your house, understanding that you need to pay the commission. So you might be putting it at a place where it covers all your expenses and still falls within the price point that the market could bear. So now you go to closing and you have your conveyance fee and you have your lawyer's fee and you have whatever credits you get back or have to pay. And then you have commission. And that is getting paid not to the agent or not to the buyer's agent, not to the buyer. It is getting paid to the listing agent's brokerage, and they are splitting that money. It's kind of like when you have to pay your prepaid taxes or you pay your closing costs and the attorney You pay it to the attorney, and the attorney pays for the taxes, and the attorney pays off your mortgage, and the attorney files the paperwork with the deed with the town. Yeah, you have to pay for all these, and you pay your attorney, but your attorney's not. The attorney's not making all this money. The attorney has to allocate those funds to cover the expenses that you have as a seller. So it's definitely a perception thing. It's definitely a transparency thing in conversation. What I think is going to happen is that there's going to be more disclosures that need to be written and signed to properly show here's what commission is, how this gets distributed. It's not being paid by the seller. It's not necessarily being paid by the buyer. It is actually almost like the cost of doing business. The seller's raising the price a little bit to cover the commission. The buyer's paying that through mortgage and down payment. If you start to say on every level we're going to eliminate the services of people that we don't want to pay for, you're going to get stuck doing a lot of stuff on your own that you don't understand. There's a reason why I need a license to sell real estate. There's a reason why I sat through class and listened to hours upon hours of real estate law. There's a real reason why I go to training, and it's to make sure that I represent you, my client, in the best capacity as possible. If you're a seller, to get the most out of your house with having, quite frankly, to do as little as possible, and to make sure that your house is protected while strangers are walking through it nonstop. To make sure that when you get to the closing table, everything's been buttoned up so you can get your final check and move on to the next phase of your life. If I'm your buyer's agent, I'm going to make sure that you're buying a piece of property where you are fully aware of all the problems that it has, or any of the things that you need to know, whether it's propane heat or it's what the taxes are and when they're paid in the town. At no point are we looking to get one over on our clients. We are trying to conduct an honest business, be as transparent as possible, and make sure that everybody understands what their role in the transaction is. There are times in the state of Connecticut where a real estate agent can represent both sides, and there's documentation that you have to sign as a seller and a buyer that says you understand what is going to happen now that this agent is representing both sides. It doesn't mean that you're going to get screwed. It doesn't mean that your back is not being kept safe. As long as the real estate agent that you're working with is honest and has integrity and follows the code of ethics, you're good. It's our job. We vow to make sure that we take care of our clients. So when I see all this craziness going on in the media, it kind of reminds me of when they said the housing market was going to crash at the beginning of the year or part of last year, and it didn't. When they said the interest rates were going to go down by the end of 2023, it didn't. That the real estate market would open up and prices would come down a little bit because there'd be more inventory, and it didn't. I can't stress enough how much I want you to stop listening to the news. Or if you do listen, use it as a point of getting some information and then go ask the experts what's actually happening. You know, keeping the real in real estate. I state that all the time because I'm desperate to help people understand what is actually happening versus what the fanatics are saying and sensationalizing out there. This lawsuit may cause us to have a different way in which we present information to our clients, which is great. You can ask any of my clients, I always make sure they know exactly what's going on at all times. I am the conduit of information. I make no decisions in the process. I give all the information so that you make a decision that's right for you. And I feel like what's going to come out of this lawsuit is just that. Another piece of information that's going to make it more clear about everybody's role. I also don't see anything changing in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. This is a court system. There's going to be a lot of appeals and other people coming out of the woodwork. I see it becoming a larger thing and then a smaller thing, and then it's going to redirect. And I'm not an attorney, and I don't profess that I am. I'm just insightful, and I can see what happens, and I can predict what I think is going to happen. So I think as sellers, you guys need to understand that there's several components to selling your house. That buyers, you are not getting a free ride by having a seller pay your commission. That's not the way it's working. There is commission, and it is being split by all those in play. Houses are being priced with commission understood. For any of you that are saying, I don't believe what she's saying, and I'm just going to go ahead and sell my house on my own. So the national average for homes that are sold on their own are 35% less than what a real estate agent can do, popping it up on the MLS and getting the most amount of exposure as possible. So for you people who are naysayers about real estate agents, go ahead and sell your house for 35% less instead of paying the 5 or 6 or 7 or 4 or 2 or whatever percentage you negotiate to get your home sold for the greatest amount of money for the least amount of time and the least amount of stress. Oh, and also done correctly. I take offense, obviously, to anybody who thinks they could just do my job because they think they know real estate. But you don't know all the things that go on in a real estate transaction. There's a lot of components that all the real estate shows on HGTV and whatnot, they don't show. They don't show what actually happens in an appraisal or what actually happens in an inspection or the fighting that can happen because they want the grill included and the grill is not included. There's so many pieces. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to talk a moment about what the news has been talking about for this lawsuit, because there's a lot of stories out there that to me are misleading. And as with all topics real estate, if you want to talk one-on-one, I'm here. You have my number. Text, email me, Facebook, whatever way you want to get in touch with me. I'm here and I'm happy to talk. I don't have all the answers. A lot of what I talk about is what's my feeling and my insight based on what I'm living every day. So bring on the discussions. I'm happy to partake. Until next time, take care.